Oh, shit. Okay. Sorry, I had to make sure this mic still works. Haven't used it in a long time, but guess what? I'm back. Today, we're going to talk about The Batman. So, The Batman. Yeah, I know. Another video, and I'm sure you've heard it all, right? About how this movie is really about the cyclical nature of violence and how vengeance begets vengeance. And that really is the main focus of this movie, right? It's about that. It's about how Batman has created a culture of paranoia and fear within the world that has driven more polarization between the do-gooders and the ne'er-do-wells. The more extreme the Batman becomes, the more extreme his villains become. And that is the curse of the Batman. That is the curse of vengeance. Vengeance begets vengeance. I don't know how many other ways I can say that because you've probably heard it a million different ways from a million different YouTubers. I know I have. They stole my content, but guess what? I thought of it first. Anyway, yeah, so you've heard all that, right? So I want to propose a different thesis about this movie, and it's one that you maybe haven't heard before because, you know, it might not even be correct, but this one is a bit more, I dare say, meta. You see, Warner Brothers has been really self-referential in meta with all of its films over the last few years. I mean, the big example obviously is The Matrix Resurrections, which I did a video on, go check it out. But you've also got Family Vacation, Tom and Jerry, Space Jam, Scream 5. I'm sure The Flash will also have like a wink and a nod at the audience too if that movie ever comes out. Anyway, my point is the list goes on, and Warner Brothers has been shameless with their meta commentary lately, over the last couple of years. And all of them are more or less cash grabs, with more or less an acknowledgement of that through the aforementioned wink and nod. And I think Batman is still meta, but it's not as shameless as all of those other ones. It's in a much better way. I think it's a much more tactful way than all of the films that have ever come before it. I think this go-round of the Batman myth is posing a question and a solution in a really meta yet meaningful way. Why do we need Batman again? To start, let's do a quick synopsis of where we've been the last 30 years. From the 80s until Y2K, Batman had what I will call its James Bond period. Each film from the Tim Burton saga across the Joel Schumacher series seems to have some kind of continuity that can't exactly be placed, while the lead actor portraying Batman has repeatedly changed throughout that continuity. In the Tim Burton films, we get introduced to a very Tim Burton-esque Batman, and Michael Keaton plays the main character while Tim Goff portrays Alfred. Keaton would reprise his role in one sequel film before Burton's Batman came to an end, and the franchise would be handed off to Joel Schumacher, who created his own continuity and his own version of Gotham City. But Tim Goff would return as Alfred for the next several films, similar to how Desmond Llewellyn would repeatedly come back as Q in the James Bond films, or how Judi Dench would play M for two different James Bond leads, while Chris O'Donnell would play Dick Grayson, aka Robin, for two different Batmen. It's hard to tell if this is like all one continuity or if they just decided to like, you know, reuse cast. I don't know. I don't even try to piece it together. Because there's also some serious breaks in the continuity in the casting, with most notably Val Kilmer and George Clooney playing Batman and Billy D. Williams playing Harvey Dent, followed by Tommy Lee Jones in what may or may not be the same continuity. I don't know, it's a whole fucking mess. Then you've got the Christopher Nolan series, the golden grail of Batman movies, but even that couldn't escape its continuity issues because like you got Katie Holmes playing Rachel Dawes, then you got Maggie Gyllenhaal playing Rachel Dawes. Also one time when I lived in New York, I was drunk and I walked in front of Maggie Gyllenhaal's house and I was like, "Hey Maggie." It was pretty cool. I had to be there. Anyway, that's a thing, but then while those movies are getting made, Christopher Nolan is simultaneously producing the Man of Steel films that were meant to tie into this Batman continuity, but then got reset again because Christian Bale's Batman runs off to Italy, and then there's just like this whole new continuity that is the shared continuity with the Man of Steel universe where Ben Affleck plays Batman, and now we're here. We aren't even 2 years off the heels of the Justice League continuity, which is still happening, by the way, and Warner Brothers is rebooting Batman again. I actually think it's a really smart idea. But the question that we have to ask here is why? Why do we need another new Batman again? What has Batman done for us in recent history, and why do we still need him? Why is he so important to bring back with such frequency and such inconsistency in portrayal? I think in some way, these are the questions that Bruce Wayne is asking himself at the beginning, right? Who is Batman? What good does Batman do? Why does the world need Batman? It's not just a question for Gotham City, it's a question for our real lived universe. And it's a question that I think Matt Reeves unpacks, deconstructs, puts back together, and answers in a really unique and interesting way. We're dropped into his version of Batman 2 years into the Gotham Project, which is what Bruce Wayne calls basically being Batman. And Bruce has an established culture around Batman within Gotham, just like how we in our own real world have an established culture around Batman in media. And yet through the years, the meaningful role of Batman and the reflection of humanity that he represents has only really been explored in depth by one of the past several continuities. But in this film, he's the darkness, he's vengeance, he shuts down the bad guys that make Gotham an inhospitable hellhole. He's got this presence about him that exudes fear and keeps criminals looking over their shoulders. And yet those criminals that we see him shutting down are symptoms of the problem, not the problem itself, which leads to a more cartoonish depictions of the Batman and the villains that he faces that have all the look and the feel, but none of the substance. In short, Batman has become a vibe, an aesthetic, and anything meaningful about him has failed to dissect and explore and deconstruct the idea of Batman and what he truly solves for us as people who live in
a society.
And throughout this film, the Batman takes a journey that I think helps him. It helps us, and maybe even helps creators find something new and worth exploring about the Caped Crusader. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we see him face several familiar enemies that have been done in every other Batman movie before. Like, not a single one of the bad guys in this movie hasn't been explored in a Batman mythos yet. We got Catwoman, we got Penguin, we got Riddler, we even got Joker for a second. They've all been done on the big screen. By making these villains a focal point of this film, I think Reeves is addressing the established history of Batman on the big screen and offering a deconstruction of them in order for us to have a new take on what the Batman can be and what he represents from like a human perspective. But what is that arc? What does he represent? Well, I think in this film, you know, the vengeance beginning vengeance is like a thing. But in his arc throughout the story, I also see that like Batman as a character confronts everything that every Batman movie has ever put in front of him as a reflection of it. The loss of his parents is intentionally left out, but the feeling that that has created, the enormous impact of being an orphan in Gotham City, that is on full display. The importance of not just being Batman, but also being Bruce Wayne and living that double life and juggling the two and being the hero that Gotham needs by night while being a businessman recluse whose enterprise is steeped in corruption by day. That's an important factor in what defines Batman, but also an important reflection on the duality of our society and what separates us as people. Then you've got the legacy of the Wayne name and the threat that his various enemies pose to him and his mission to clean up Gotham and like the clues that the Riddler leaves behind. Matt Reeves is taking us as the audience on a detective journey where we are challenged to look at, interpret, and piece together all the familiar elements of a Batman movie to uncover an answer to what makes Batman matter as a character, as a story, as an analysis on the human condition. And when the pieces have all been put together, we see that the response to what's come before is a simple idea that Batman means vengeance. He's been our light in a dark world. He's symbolized that good can come from bad, that anger and hatred can be a breaking point to make way for some positive change if we're willing to invest the energy and do the work. Trauma can lead to vengeance, and vengeance can beget vengeance, but darkness can also lead to light. Anger can also lead to beauty. Something good can come from something bad, and we've never seen that Batman film. I'd argue that all we've really seen is vibe. All we've seen is emo punk shit and licensed merch for the last several decades. Even the Nolan trilogy, which is one of the best, is ultimately about the fact that we live in a society and how when given the opportunity, good people will do bad things and bad people will do good things. And it's so complex in how it tells us that evil isn't always evil for the sake of evil. It's more nuanced than that. The people we see as bad are oftentimes motivated by a perceived idea of right and wrong that we just disagree with, however misguided that might be. But that's a story that you could tell about any superhero. I mean, what's so special about Batman in those stories when you really think about it, right? There's more to what makes Batman special as a hero and a character that's still worth exploring. Taking a look at the franchise as a whole, taking the good with the bad to figure out what Batman has meant to us and what he could mean to us all moving forward. When I watch this movie, The Batman, I see a movie that reminds us about why Batman matters and why the legend of it is so enduring. It's not just about the edgelords or the brooding dark superheroes or justice or vengeance for that matter. Those are all pieces of what makes Batman distinct and byproducts of what makes Batman matter. He's been a lot of things. He's been pure camp. He's been the reluctant hero. He's been rubber nipples. He's been the Dark Knight, and he's been vengeance at this point. But when it comes to the Hollywood set production of Batman, he's been his own worst enemy. And to move the myth forward, he needs to be more than all that has come before. He needs to be more than an aesthetic. He needs to be more than a vibe. He needs to be more than vengeance. He needs to be more than rubber nipples. Anyway, thanks for tuning into this episode. I really enjoyed it, and I think there's a lot to unpack about this movie, and I just, like, nobody watches a video that's longer than 10 minutes anymore on YouTube. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. I'm back on the channel. I've been off for a bit. My partner is opening a store, which I will be promoting on my next YouTube video. If you guys live in Chicago, where I live, you'll be able to see about it, hear about it, check it out, maybe walk in, be like, hey, you know, your baby daddy sent me here. I'm gonna come buy stuff. So do that. And I think the next video I really want to do Peaky Blinders, because I got a VPN and I watched the series finale, Peaky Blinders. Even though I live in the United States, I'm like a month ahead of all you guys. And that gives me time to actually put together a video that might air just around the time that the series finale hits Netflix. So keep an eye out for that. Anyway, thank you for tuning into this episode, and I will be back soon.